I still remember that night like it was burned into my memory, the night everything snapped. My name's Aaron. I'm 19 now, but back then, I had just graduated high school. You'd think that'd be one of those moments you never forget because of pride or celebration. For me, it's unforgettable for a completely different reason. It was supposed to be my day. The one day that wasn't about my sister or my parents or their drama. Just me. The first in the family to graduate with honors. The kid who worked part-time at a grocery store to pay for his own car, who stayed up until 2 a.m. studying while everyone else slept. But apparently, even that was too much attention for me to have. My sister, Lily, is 2 years younger than me. She's complicated. Growing up, she was the kind of kid who could throw a tantrum in the middle of a restaurant and still somehow walk away with a free dessert. She had this way of turning every situation into something about her. Broke a plate? It was because she was too stressed. Lied about a test? Because the teacher didn't like her. And my parents, especially my mom, always rushed to smooth things over. She's sensitive, Mom would say. You're older, Aaron. You need to understand. That phrase, you need to understand, might as well have been tattooed on my brain by the time I turned 18. I guess I started noticing the favoritism early on, but I didn't have a word for it then. It started small. Lily got the newer phone, the bigger birthday parties, the constant praise for things that, frankly, weren't that impressive. I'd bring home an A, and my parents would nod like it was expected. Lily brought home a B, and suddenly she was so hardworking. I tried not to let it get to me. I told myself I'd make my own way, that someday I'd have something no one could take credit for. That someday, they'd have to see me. Graduation day was supposed to be that moment. I had imagined it for years. The cap, the gown, the photos, maybe a small family gathering afterward. My parents promised they'd throw a party at our house. Nothing big, just close friends and family. I'd been counting down the days. But a week before the ceremony, Lily started acting weird. Quiet. Irritable. I thought maybe she was stressed about finals or something. I didn't realize she was setting the stage for what was about to happen. The night before my graduation, Mom called me downstairs. I was in my room going over my speech for the ceremony. I'd been chosen to give a short speech because of my GPA. She was standing in the kitchen with Dad, both of them looking like they were about to deliver some bad news. Aaron, Mom started, her voice oddly gentle. We need to talk about tomorrow. I remember frowning, confused. What about tomorrow? The party, she said, glancing at Dad. We've decided to postpone it. Postpone. My heart sank. What do you mean postpone it? What? Dad sighed like it was somehow my fault for even asking. Your sister's been going through a lot lately, he said. She's been feeling overshadowed. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. Overshadowed? It's my graduation, not a spotlight competition. Mom's tone sharpened. Aaron, she's your sister. You need to be more understanding. She's been struggling emotionally. The attention lately has been hard for her. I stared at them, waiting for one of them to crack a smile, to admit this was some kind of ridiculous test. But they didn't. So, you're canceling my graduation party because she feels left out? I asked, my voice shaking between disbelief and anger. It's not canceled, Mom said quickly. Just postponed. We thought it might be nice to combine it with something for Lily later this summer. Maybe when she gets her driver's license. I can still feel that cold wave of realization washing over me. The way my stomach dropped, the way my throat closed up. They weren't joking. My own parents were stealing my moment because my sister didn't like that I had won. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at the two people who were supposed to be proud of me, realizing for the first time that maybe they never would be. Okay, I said finally, forcing a small nod. If that's what you think is fair. I went back to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed for what felt like hours. The next morning, I went to the ceremony alone. They showed up late, of course, right as I was walking onto the stage to get my diploma. Lily didn't clap. She sat there scrolling through her phone while my parents smiled like nothing was wrong. I remember scanning the crowd, seeing everyone else's families cheering, taking pictures, holding up signs, and I felt completely hollow. I smiled for the cameras, but inside, I was done. That night, when I came home, the decorations were gone. The ones I had put up myself, streamers, a little congrats grad banner, had been taken down. In their place, there was nothing. Just the faint smell of dinner from earlier and the sound of Lily laughing in the living room. I don't even know what triggered it exactly. Maybe it was that laugh, Or maybe it was the quiet realization that this house would never feel like home again. But I went to my room, opened my closet, and started packing. A backpack, a duffel bag, a few clothes, my laptop, and my diploma. That was it. No grand plan, no dramatic goodbye. Just me walking out the front door while my parents watched TV, completely oblivious. I ended up staying on a friend's couch that first week. Then another. Then eventually, I found a small room to rent downtown near the bus stop. It wasn't much, cracked walls, leaky faucet, but it was mine. For the first time, no one told me I had to understand anyone else's feelings before my own. I got a job at a small tech store repairing phones and laptops. It wasn't glamorous, but I was good at it, and the owner liked my work ethic. That job became the start of something I didn't even know I was capable of. But before any of that, before things turned around, there were some dark months. Nights where I'd lie awake wondering if I'd made a huge mistake leaving. Wondering if my parents even noticed I was gone. They didn't call. Not once. It wasn't until almost 3 months later that I got my first message from Mom. Not to ask how I was doing. Not to apologize. But to tell me Lily missed me and that I should stop being stubborn. I read it over and over, feeling that familiar sting of guilt, the same one they'd used to control me for years. But I didn't reply. Not yet. That's how it started. The silence. The distance. The slow unraveling of everything I thought family meant. But what I didn't know at the time was that distance would become my greatest weapon. That the same silence they created would be the one that exposed every lie they ever told. And that exposure? It began with one simple message from Lily, a year later. That would change everything. The message from Lily came out of nowhere. It was almost exactly a year after I'd left home. I was sitting in the back of the repair shop where I worked, eating a late lunch and scrolling through my phone, when I saw her name pop up on the screen. It was just one line. "Hey, Mom said you're still mad. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a good minute, half expecting it to be a mistake. It wasn't. My heart twisted in that familiar way it always did when I saw her name. Half guilt, half resentment. A year ago, she'd barely looked up from her phone while my parents were canceling my graduation party for her sake. Now suddenly she wanted to talk? Still, curiosity got the better of me. I typed back a short reply. "What do you want to talk about?" She didn't answer right away. Hours passed, customers came and went, and I almost forgot about it. Until my phone buzzed again that evening. "Can you come by this weekend? Mom wants everyone together for dinner." For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they were trying to make things right. Maybe time had softened something in them. Maybe they missed me. But the second I showed up that weekend, I realized how wrong I was. The house looked exactly the same, but it felt smaller somehow. Like all the warmth had been drained out of it. My mom greeted me at the door with that tight, overly bright smile she always used when she wanted to look like the perfect parent. Dad was in his recliner watching TV. Lily was sprawled on the couch in designer clothes that I definitely knew she hadn't paid for herself. "Well, look who finally decided to visit," Mom said, brushing imaginary dust off my shoulder. "You look different." "Yeah," I said. "Guess working full-time does that." She gave a little laugh, but her eyes were already darting toward Lily, who hadn't even acknowledged me yet. "Lily, say hi to your brother." "Hey," Lily muttered without looking up. That was about the extent of the warmth I got that night. Dinner was awkward, filled with long silences and half-hearted questions about my job. I told them I was doing okay, saving money, and thinking about taking night classes in computer repair. Mom's response was a sigh. "You're still doing that? Don't you think it's time to find something more stable?" "It is stable," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I'm good at it." My boss said. "Aaron, no offense," Dad cut in, "but fixing phones isn't a career. You're smart. You should be in college like your sister will be soon." That hit harder than I expected. My sister hadn't even graduated yet, and already she was being praised for potential while my actual hard work was being dismissed. Mom quickly jumped in, trying to redirect the conversation. "Speaking of that," she said, "Lily got accepted to state. Isn't that wonderful?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, that's great." Lily finally looked up, smirking like she'd just won something. "They're giving me a scholarship," she said, twirling her hair. "But Mom and Dad said they'll help with the dorm and stuff. You know, because they want me to have the full experience." I nodded slowly. That's nice of them. Inside, I felt that old, familiar burn. The one that came every time they bent over backwards for her while acting like I was just some guest in their lives. I didn't say anything else during dinner. I just watched as they talked about her future, her plans, her classes, her excitement. No one asked about mine. After dinner, when I was helping Mom with the dishes, she gave me this half-sympathetic look. Aaron, I know things were tense before, but you can't hold on to resentment forever. You and your sister need to move past it. I didn't even look at her. I'm not the one who made it a competition. She paused, her voice going cold. It's not a competition. It's family. You should be happy for her. I wanted to say so many things, to remind her that I'd spent my whole life being the one who was supposed to understand, to sacrifice, to smile through every moment Lily got what she wanted, but I didn't. I just said, yeah, sure. When I left that night, my mom hugged me, but it felt like a formality, like she wanted to check a box that said, good parent. As I walked back to my car, I caught a glimpse of them through the window, Mom and Dad laughing with Lily, her showing them something on her phone. It looked like the perfect family picture. I guess I just didn't fit in the frame anymore. After that, I didn't visit much. Maybe once every few months, when guilt got the better of me. Each time was the same. Lily bragging about some new trip or purchase, my parents doting on her, and me feeling smaller by the minute. But I kept my head down, kept working, and started putting money aside. I didn't know what I was saving for exactly, but it felt good to have something that was mine. Around that time, my boss at the repair shop, a guy named Ben, pulled me aside one afternoon. You've got a good head for this stuff, he said. Ever thought about doing freelance work? Setting up your own thing? The idea planted itself in my mind and wouldn't leave. Within a few months, I started taking small repair jobs on the side, mostly through word of mouth, fixing computers for students and small businesses. It wasn't much at first, but it was growing. For the first time, I felt proud of myself in a way that didn't need my parents' approval. Then, out of nowhere, they tried to pull me back in. It started with a text from my mom. Hey honey, can you come by next weekend? We're having a small celebration for Lily before she leaves for college. We'd love for you to be there. I hesitated, but I said yes. I told myself it was just one dinner. One evening. When I arrived, the house was decorated with balloons and banners that said, Congratulations, Lily. There were trays of food, a cake, even a slideshow of baby pictures. I stood there, watching as she opened gifts and posed for photos like a celebrity, and all I could think about was that this was the party they couldn't be bothered to throw for me. Doesn't it look great? Mom said, catching me watching. We wanted her to feel special. She does, I said flatly. Mom's smile faltered. Aaron, don't be like that. You had your turn. I almost laughed at that. My turn? When exactly had that been? When they canceled my graduation party. When I packed my life into a duffel bag and left without a word. The tension simmered all evening. I kept quiet, but inside, something was boiling. Every time Lily talked about how lucky she was to have supportive parents, I felt my jaw tighten. Then she said something that finally cracked my patience. During dessert, she leaned across the table and smirked. Hey Aaron, you're still fixing phones, right? Maybe when I get to college, you can fix mine for free. The table went quiet for a second, waiting for me to laugh it off. I didn't. Sure, I said evenly. And maybe when you graduate, I'll throw you a party, if you can handle the attention. Her smile froze. My mom's eyes widened. Aaron, that was uncalled for. No, I said, setting my fork down. What's uncalled for is pretending everything's fine. You guys canceled my party for her, remember? You told me to understand, because she was feeling left out. But now it's okay to spend hundreds of dollars and invite the whole neighborhood. Aaron, stop, Dad said sharply. This isn't the time. When is the time? I asked. My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking. Because I've been waiting for it my whole life. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Mom sighed, like I was the one ruining everything again. You always take things so personally. We did what was best for the family. Lily needed support. You were fine. I stood up, chair scraping against the floor. Yeah, I was fine. Because I learned a long time ago not to expect anything from you. I walked out before anyone could stop me. That night, I didn't go home. I drove around for hours, the words echoing in my head. You were fine. That was always their excuse. I wasn't fine. I had spent years pretending to be so they wouldn't have to feel guilty. But I guess something changed in me after that night. I stopped looking back. I threw myself into work, 12, 14 hours a day sometimes. I learned how to manage clients, how to advertise, how to build a brand. My side business started taking off faster than I expected. Within a few months, I was making more than I did at the repair shop. Ben noticed, and instead of getting angry, he congratulated me. "You've got drive, kid," he said. "Keep going." So I did. And as I built that small business, something strange happened. People started noticing. Local shops reached out for maintenance contracts, and I hired my first helper. Then another. I was exhausted but happier than I'd ever been. Every bit of success felt like proof that I didn't need anyone's approval. But then, just when I thought I'd finally escaped their shadow, my parents found out. And what happened after that would turn everything upside down again. It started with a phone call from my mom one evening. Her voice unusually sweet. "Aaron, honey, we've been hearing such great things about your little business," she said. "Your aunt mentioned she saw your name on Facebook. You must be doing well." I didn't miss the subtle shift. The same woman who once told me fixing phones wasn't a career now sounded impressed. I should have been happy, but I felt wary instead. "Yeah, it's going okay," I said carefully. "That's wonderful," she gushed. "You know, your father and I were just saying how proud we are. Maybe we can all get together soon. Have dinner, celebrate properly this time." It sounded too good to be true. And, as I would soon find out, it was. Because that dinner wasn't about celebrating me. It was about what they thought they could get from me. And the moment Lily found out just how successful I'd become, how much money I was actually making, that's when everything really started to unravel. I should have known something was off the second I walked through their door again. Everything about that evening felt rehearsed. The warm smiles, the perfect dinner table, even the way my mom called me sweetheart, a word I hadn't heard from her since I was a kid. They'd set the table with their nicest plates, candles burning low, soft music in the background. It felt too perfect, too polished, like a scene from one of those commercials where everything looks fine right before something goes horribly wrong. My dad greeted me first, patting me on the back a little too hard. "There he is, our big shot businessman," he said, his grin wide and unnatural. "Heard you're doing great things, son." I blinked, unsure how to respond. He hadn't called me son in over a year. "Yeah, things are going pretty well," I said cautiously, hanging my jacket on the chair. Mom came over with a plate of appetizers, her tone syrupy. "We're so proud of you, Aaron. Really, it's amazing what you've accomplished." I nodded, trying to believe them. Maybe this was real. Maybe, after everything, they finally meant it. I told myself to stop being paranoid, to let my guard down for once. So I sat down, smiled, and joined them for dinner. For a while, it almost felt normal. My mom asked about my business, how many clients I had, what kind of work I was doing. Dad even seemed impressed when I told him I'd landed a few long-term contracts with local offices. Lily sat quietly through most of it, which was odd. She wasn't the type to stay quiet when someone else was getting attention. I caught her glancing at me a few times, though, that same smirk tugging at the corner of her lips, the same one she wore the night of her graduation party. Then, halfway through dessert, she finally spoke. "So, Aaron," she said, resting her chin on her hand, "how much do you make now?" The room went silent. My fork froze midair. I forced a small laugh. "That's a weird question, Lily." She shrugged. "I'm just curious. Mom said you're doing really well." Like really well. Mom gave her a warning look, but it was too late. My stomach dropped. They'd been talking about me, about money. I could feel the shift in the air, that undercurrent of interest disguised as pride. I set my fork down slowly. "I do fine," I said evenly. "Enough to live comfortably." Lily leaned back in her chair, smiling like she'd just confirmed something. "Comfortably, huh? Must be nice." I wanted to change the subject, but Mom jumped in before I could. "Actually, Aaron, since you're doing so well, there's something we wanted to discuss." There it was. The hook. Dad cleared his throat. "You know Lily's starting college soon, right? And tuition's gone up since we last checked. Even with the scholarship, there's still a lot of expenses. Books, housing, food." I felt my heart start to race. "Okay." Mom folded her hands neatly, her tone calm and calculated. "We thought, since you're in such a good place now, maybe you could help out a little. You know, just to support your sister while she adjusts." I almost laughed, but it came out as a sharp exhale. "You want me to pay for her college?" "Not all of it," she said quickly, like that would make it better. "Just some of the costs. It's family, Aaron. We help each other." I stared at them, my brain trying to catch up. A year ago, they'd let me walk out with nothing. No support, no concern. And now that I'd finally built something on my own, they wanted a piece of it. "Mom," I said carefully. When I left, you didn't even call. You didn't care where I was or how I was doing. Why now? Her expression softened in that fake, motherly way she always used to get her way. We didn't want to pressure you. You needed space. But things are different now. We're all older, wiser. Can't we just move on from the past? Dad nodded, his tone firm. Your family, Aaron. We take care of each other. Lily's your sister. I turned to Lily. What do you think about this? She shrugged. It's not a big deal. You've got money, right? It's not like you're buying me a car or anything. That line hit me like a slap. The entitlement, the utter lack of awareness. It was all so familiar. I felt something crack inside me. You know what, Lily? You're right. It's not like I'm buying you a car. Because I'm not buying you anything. Her smile dropped. Mom's face went stiff. Aaron, that's not fair, she said sharply. You're being selfish. Selfish? I repeated, my voice rising. You canceled my graduation party for her. You made me feel like celebrating my success was some kind of crime. I left this house because of that, and now you want me to bankroll her education? How is that not selfish? You're overreacting, Dad said, his tone suddenly cold again. We're asking for help, not a handout. Family helps family. I stood up. Family also shows up when you graduate. Family calls to check in. Family doesn't pretend you don't exist until they need something. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Mom's expression changed. Her pitying look hardened into something else. You know, Aaron, I don't like your tone. We've always done our best for you. Maybe if you hadn't run off, things would be different. That was the final straw. You didn't lose me because I ran off, I said quietly. You lost me because you chose her every single time. I grabbed my jacket and walked toward the door. But before I could leave, Lily's voice stopped me. You're gonna regret this, she said, her tone smug. You think you're better than us now, but guess what? You'll come crawling back eventually. You always do. I turned around, meeting her gaze. Not this time. I left without looking back. That night, I couldn't sleep. The anger was too strong, pulsing through me like electricity. I kept replaying every moment, every word, every fake smile. I realized something I hadn't before. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted access to my success, to my money, to the proof that I'd made it without them. A few weeks passed. I kept working, growing my business, pretending like that dinner hadn't happened. Then one afternoon, while I was at a client's office, I got a call from my bank. The woman on the line sounded concerned. Mr. Reeves, we just wanted to confirm a transfer request for $4,000 to a Lily Reeves. Is that correct? My blood went cold. What? No, absolutely not. She paused. It came from your online account. The request was submitted earlier today. My mind was spinning. Cancel it. Freeze the account. After hanging up, I logged in immediately, and sure enough, there it was. A pending transfer to Lily. Somehow, she'd gotten into my account. I sat there in disbelief, staring at the screen. I hadn't given her my information. I hadn't even told her which bank I used. But she must have guessed, or maybe Mom helped her. That thought hit harder than anything else. I called my mom, my hands shaking. She answered cheerfully, like nothing was wrong. Hi, honey. Everything okay? Did you or Lily try to take money from my account? Silence. Then, that fake innocence. Aaron, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb, I snapped. There was a transfer attempt. For $1,000 to Lily. How did she even know where I bank? Mom hesitated, her tone suddenly defensive. She just mentioned she needed help paying for books and rent. We thought maybe. I repeated, my stomach twisting. So you did help her? Aaron, calm down, she said quickly. We didn't take anything. We just thought, since you're doing well, you wouldn't mind. It's not like you'd miss it. I was speechless. For a moment, I couldn't even process what I was hearing. My own mother had helped my sister try to take money from me, and justified it because I wouldn't miss it. I hung up without another word. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized the truth. There was no going back. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a rough patch. It was betrayal, pure and deliberate. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad about it. I felt clear. Cold, maybe, but clear. They'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But what they didn't realize, what they couldn't have known, was that I wasn't the same kid they'd guilt and gaslit into silence. I had something now that they never expected me to have. Independence, resources, and a plan forming in the back of my mind. Because if they thought they could use me again, they were about to learn exactly what it meant to underestimate the son they'd cast aside. And Lily's next move? It would give me every reason I needed to strike back in a way none of them would ever see coming. After that phone call, I didn't talk to my family for months. I blocked all three of them, Mom, Dad, and Lily, on everything. No texts, no calls, no happy birthday messages that came with hidden guilt trips. Nothing. It was like cutting a cord I'd spent years tangled in, and for a while, it felt hollow. I'd sit in my tiny apartment at night, lights off, scrolling through old pictures, Christmases, birthdays, vacations, and wonder how long they'd been pretending. How long they'd smiled to my face while quietly choosing her over me. But mostly, I felt tired. Not angry, not vengeful, just done. I didn't tell anyone what happened at first. Not Ben, not the few friends who still checked in. I just threw myself into work. The repair business that started in a dusty backroom had grown faster than I could have imagined. I was working 16-hour days sometimes, fixing phones, upgrading laptops, building websites for local shops that couldn't afford big tech companies. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. That sense of ownership became my fuel. Every job I finished felt like a small victory, proof that I didn't need anyone to validate me anymore. By the end of that year, I'd saved enough to move into a small office downtown. It had peeling paint and flickering lights, but when I saw my name, Reeves Tech Services, on the front window, I stood there for a long time, just staring. That was the moment I knew I'd never go back. Still, there were nights I felt that familiar ache. I'd see families walking together on weekends, laughing, and that voice in my head would whisper, "You should have had that too." But then I'd think about that transfer attempt, the betrayal, and the ache would harden into resolve. I promised myself something that night. I would never let them take anything from me again. Not money, not time, not peace. A few months later, my business really took off. One of my clients, an older guy named James who owned a chain of small furniture stores, asked me to help him set up an inventory system. I did it in half the time he expected, and when he realized how efficient it was, he recommended me to everyone he knew. Within weeks, I had more work than I could handle. I hired my first employee, a college kid named Tyler who reminded me a little of myself. Quiet, hardworking, just trying to prove he belonged somewhere. "Man, your story's crazy," Tyler said one night as we were closing up. "Starting all this from scratch after leaving home? Most people wouldn't have made it." I just shrugged. "You'd be surprised what you can do when no one's clapping for you." That became my motto. By the time Lily finished her first year of college, I had 3 employees, a small fleet of company laptops, and contracts with half a dozen businesses in the city. I'd upgraded from that cramped apartment to a modest condo near the river. Nothing fancy, but it had space, light, and silence. The kind of silence that felt peaceful, not lonely. Life was good, better than it had ever been. Then one day, as I was reviewing invoices, an email popped up. The subject line read, "Hey stranger." It was from Lily. For a moment, I just stared at it, debating whether to delete it. But curiosity got the better of me. The message was short, written in her usual breezy tone. "Hey Aaron, heard from Mom that you're doing really well. Congrats, I guess. Anyway, I'm kinda in a rough spot. My car broke down and I don't have the money to fix it. I was wondering if you could help out, just this once. I'll pay you back when I can." I almost laughed. The nerve. After everything she'd done, after trying to steal from me, she had the audacity to ask for help. I didn't even bother replying. I just archived the email and went back to work. But that message stuck in my head for days. Not because of what she asked, but because of what it revealed. She'd only reached out because she thought I'd say yes. Because deep down, she and my parents still believed I was the same passive, guilt-driven son they could manipulate. They hadn't realized I'd changed. Over the next few months, I focused on scaling my business even more. I took online courses in digital marketing, learned how to automate systems, built an actual brand identity. The business grew faster than I expected. By the end of the year, I was earning more in a month than I used to make in a year. That success didn't go unnoticed. My parents started showing up in small ways again, liking old social media posts, commenting generic compliments like "so proud of you" under photos of the office. I ignored them, but I could tell they were watching, waiting for the right moment to step back into my life. That moment came on a rainy Friday night. I was locking up the office when I got a call from an unknown number. I usually ignored those, but something made me pick it up. Hello, Aaron. It was my dad. For a second, I didn't even recognize his voice. It was lower, rougher. Dad, yeah, it's me. Listen, I know it's been a while, but your mom's not doing too well. She's been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe you could come by and see her. The guilt hit me instantly, just like he knew it would. My dad always had that way of twisting things, so I'd feel responsible. Is she okay? I asked, already hating myself for caring. She will be, he said. She just misses you. We all do. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed not to go. But something in his tone, whether it was genuine or not, made me give in. All right, I said quietly. I'll come by tomorrow. When I pulled up the next afternoon, the house looked worse. The paint was peeling, the yard overgrown. It felt like time had stopped there while my life kept moving forward. Mom looked surprised when she opened the door, like she hadn't expected me to actually come. Aaron, she said softly. You came. I nodded, stepping inside. Dad said you weren't feeling well. Oh, it's nothing, she said, waving it off. Just stress. You know how it is. I didn't respond. I looked around and realized the house was filled with unopened mail and piles of paperwork. Bills, credit card statements, overdue notices. Then Lily walked in. She looked different, older, but not in a good way. Her once perfect hair was dull, her face pale, dark circles under her eyes. She forced a smile. Hey, big brother. I nodded politely. Hey. Mom started fussing over tea and cookies, but the tension was thick. It didn't take long before the small talk faded and the real reason for my visit came out. Aaron, Dad began, sitting forward in his chair. We're going through a bit of a rough patch financially. Things have been tight. I stayed silent. Mom jumped in quickly. It's just temporary. But the mortgage payments are behind, and Lily's tuition, well, that's been tough to keep up with too. We didn't want to bother you, but there it was again. That but. But what? I asked quietly. She folded her hands. If you could help us just this once, we'd be so grateful. We'll pay you back as soon as things settle. My throat went dry. Deja vu, same pitch, different excuse. Lily leaned forward, her tone pleading. Aaron, please. It's not like you can't afford it. You have your own business now. I looked at her, really looked at her. The same girl who'd stolen from me, without a shred of remorse, now sitting across from me, pretending to be desperate. But behind her eyes, I saw something else. Calculation. I'll think about it, I said finally. It was a lie. That night, when I got home, I sat in the dark staring out the window at the city lights. Part of me still felt guilty, but another part, the stronger one, felt something else. Clarity. I wasn't their backup plan anymore. I wasn't the safety net for their bad choices. Over the next few weeks, I poured everything into work. I started a second company, this one focused on cybersecurity and data protection. I hired a small team of specialists and learned everything I could about privacy and digital security. It was something I'd wanted to do ever since that day Lily tried to steal from me. Maybe it started out as a defensive move, but it quickly became my passion. Within 6 months, Reeves Tech Solutions wasn't just a local repair business. It was a full-fledged tech company. We had clients across 3 cities. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And for the first time in my life, I felt power. Not the kind that comes from money or status, but the kind that comes from finally knowing your worth. I didn't realize it then, but that power, the independence they once mocked, was about to become the very thing that tore their world apart. Because soon, their lies would start catching up with them. And when Lily's jealousy boiled over, she would make one mistake too many, the one that exposed everything they'd tried to hide. It all started with a voicemail. One random Tuesday morning, I was in my office reviewing invoices when I noticed a missed call from an unknown number. The voicemail was short, barely 15 seconds, but what I heard made my stomach turn. Hi, this is Karen from State Financial Aid Services. We're calling to confirm some income details regarding your co-signed student loan for Lily Reeves. Please call us back as soon as possible. Co-signed. I froze. I hadn't signed anything for Lily. Ever. I called the number immediately, and after verifying my identity, the woman on the line politely explained that my name was listed as a co-signer for Lily's student loan, one that had been approved a few months earlier. The blood rushed to my ears. There must be a mistake, I said. I didn't co-sign any loan. She hesitated. We have a signed form with your name and signature, sir. I asked her to send me a copy. When I opened the PDF later that day, my hands started shaking. There it was, my name, my signature, my information. Except the signature wasn't mine. It was forged. They'd forged my signature. I stared at that paper for a long time. My parents' address was listed as the contact. Lily's phone number. Everything about it screamed manipulation. I could even picture how it happened. Lily crying about tuition, Mom comforting her, Dad suggesting they just handle it for now. Then the three of them sitting around a table, convincing themselves it wasn't really wrong because Aaron can afford it. That was the final piece I needed. I didn't blow up. I didn't call them. I didn't yell or demand apologies. I'd learned long ago that anger was useless with people like them. It only gave them control. So instead, I sat down at my desk and began to plan. Over the past year, I'd built connections through my cybersecurity company, lawyers, investigators, business owners who trusted me with sensitive data. I knew exactly who to call. I forwarded the documents to one of my clients, a legal consultant named Michael, who specialized in financial fraud cases. He called me back within the hour. "This is serious," he said. "Forging your name on a federal loan application is fraud. Big time. Do you want to press charges?" I thought about it for a long moment. "Not yet," I said. "I want to make sure they understand what they did first." He paused. "You're planning something. Let's just say." I replied, "I'm done being their scapegoat." I spent the next few weeks gathering everything: old texts, emails, the transfer attempt, the bank record, even social media posts where Lily bragged about buying things she clearly couldn't afford. Michael helped me quietly file a fraud alert and freeze all my financial ties to their address. He also suggested something else: a formal notification to the university and loan provider that the co-signer's signature was forged. It would trigger an internal investigation, and that's exactly what I wanted. A month later, I got an email from the university's financial office confirming that Lily's loan was being reviewed for possible irregularities. A copy was also sent to her. I could only imagine the chaos that caused. It didn't take long for my phone to start blowing up. First it was Mom, then Dad, then Lily. I ignored them all for 2 days until finally I picked up, just once. "What did you do?" Lily's voice shrieked through the speaker. "They froze my account. I can't register for next semester. You ruined everything." "Actually," I said calmly, "you did that when you forged my name." "It wasn't a big deal," she yelled. "Mom said you'd understand. We just needed help for a while." "I'm done understanding," I said quietly. "Actions have consequences, Lily. Welcome to yours." She started crying, screaming about how selfish I was, how I'd destroyed her future. I listened silently for a few seconds before ending the call. A few days later, I got a call from my parents. They sounded desperate. "Aaron, this is getting out of hand," Mom said. "They're threatening legal action. You need to tell them you approved it." I couldn't help but laugh. "You want me to commit fraud to cover for your fraud?" Dad's tone hardened. "Don't be dramatic. You've got money. You can afford to fix this." And that's when I decided to make it official. I forwarded all communication to Michael, who filed the necessary paperwork. The investigation escalated quickly. Within 2 weeks, the loan was canceled due to forgery, and the matter was referred to the authorities for review. No one went to jail, but they were forced to pay back everything immediately. Every penny. The fallout was worse than I imagined. Their finances, already hanging by a thread, completely collapsed. The house went into foreclosure. Lily had to drop out of college mid-semester. I didn't celebrate it, but I didn't feel bad either. For once, I wasn't the victim. And as all of that unfolded, my own life kept rising. My company landed a major deal with a regional tech distributor, doubling our yearly revenue overnight. I hired more staff, opened a second office, and finally bought something I'd wanted for years: a small modern house overlooking the water. It wasn't about the money. It was about freedom. Every inch of that house reminded me that I built this life alone. Months passed. I didn't hear from them. Not until one chilly autumn evening, when I got another message from Lily, this time from a new number. It was just a photo. Her standing outside what looked like a rundown apartment building, makeup streaked from tears, with the caption, "Are you happy now?" I stared at it for a long time before replying. "I'm not happy you failed, Lily. I'm happy I finally stopped letting you use me." I didn't get a response. Weeks later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she'd moved back in with my parents, who were now renting a small place outside town. Apparently, they told everyone that I abandoned the family after getting rich, painting themselves as victims. It used to bother me how easily they rewrote the story, but not anymore. The truth didn't need defending. It spoke for itself. Then one night, I got an email from one of my business clients, a local entrepreneur who'd attended a networking event. He sent me a photo taken at the event, asking, "Is this your sister?" It was Lily, smiling in a cheap suit, standing next to a booth labeled Reeves Digital Consulting. She'd started her own company, using my last name. At first, I laughed. Then I dug deeper. Her company was basically a website copy-pasted from mine. Same layout, same services, even the same photos of devices I'd taken myself. She'd ripped everything from me. This time, I didn't even get angry. I just sent the information to my lawyer. Within a week, she received a cease and desist notice for copyright infringement and impersonation of a registered brand. Her website was taken down in 3 days. That was the end of it, officially. But emotionally, something inside me finally settled. I didn't need to scream, or gloat, or make them pay. I just needed them to see what happened when I stopped being their scapegoat and started acting like the man they said I'd never become. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about outgrowing them so completely that they have to live with the proof of what they lost. And that's exactly what happened. Because while they were busy trying to tear me down, I built something that couldn't be touched. And the next time I ran into Lily, unexpectedly, at a local cafe months later, she looked at me with this hollow stare, like she didn't recognize me anymore. She forced a smile and said, "You really did it, didn't you?" I just nodded, set down my coffee, and said, "Yeah, without you." Then I walked out, leaving her sitting there, staring after me, realizing that for the first time in our lives, I didn't know her a thing. And that silence, the look on her face as she finally understood, was worth more than any revenge I could have planned. But what I didn't know then was that it wasn't quite over. Because months later, I'd discover something buried deep in their mess, something that would change the story all over again. A few months passed, and I thought it was over. My parents had gone quiet, my sister was out of sight, and my business was thriving. Life felt balanced for once, peaceful, even. Every morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the big windows of my house by the river. I'd make coffee, check my emails, watch the water drift by. It was the kind of life I used to dream about when I was sleeping on that friend's couch after leaving home. But peace never lasts long when you've spent your life tied to people who thrive on chaos. It started with a letter, an actual paper letter, in a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a short handwritten note. "You ruined us. I hope you're proud." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. The handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's, sharp, controlled, always written in blue ink. I stared at it for a long moment before folding it neatly and setting it on the counter. I didn't feel angry or sad, just tired. They wanted me to feel guilt again. They wanted me to regret standing up for myself. But I didn't. Not anymore. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know how bad things had really gotten. I wasn't going to reach out, but I knew how to find out. I had contacts, people who worked with the local banks, real estate agents, old clients who knew how to find information if you asked quietly. The truth came back in pieces. My parents had lost the house months earlier, foreclosure confirmed. They were living in a small rental on the outskirts of town. My dad had taken early retirement after his company downsized, and my mom was working part-time at a local store. Lily was back home, unemployed, still telling people she was working on her own business. Their world had collapsed completely. Part of me thought that would make me feel vindicated. But when I drove past their old house one day, the one I grew up in, and saw strangers living there, their kids playing on the lawn, I didn't feel triumph. Just distance. It wasn't my home anymore. Maybe it never had been. A few weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Lily again. "Please, Aaron. I need to talk to you. It's important." For reasons I still don't understand, I said yes. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I just wanted to hear her say the words she'd never said before. We agreed to meet at a small diner halfway between my place and theirs. When I walked in, she was already there, hair messy, hoodie pulled over her head, fingers tapping nervously against her coffee cup. She looked up when I approached, and for the first time, I didn't see the smug, entitled sister I grew up with. I saw someone broken. "Aaron," she said quietly. "Thanks for coming." I sat down. "What's this about, Lily?" She took a shaky breath. I know you hate me, and I don't blame you, but I need to tell you something before it's too late. That line set off alarm bells in my head. Too late for what? She hesitated. Mom's sick. She hasn't told anyone, but it's bad. Cancer. Stage 3. She didn't want you to know. The words hit me harder than I expected. For a second, I couldn't speak. Since when? 6 months, she whispered. She's been trying to work through it, but the treatments are expensive. Dad's out of work. We can barely afford rent, let alone hospital bills. I leaned back in my seat, processing everything. Why are you telling me this now? She looked down at her hands. Because she won't stop talking about you. She thinks you hate her. She says she deserves it. I can't keep watching her like this. The silence stretched between us. For the first time in years, she wasn't smirking. She wasn't performing. She was just human. I didn't say much after that. I paid for her coffee, nodded, and left. On the drive home, I kept replaying her words. Mom's sick. She didn't want you to know. That night, I sat by the window for hours, staring at the river. I told myself I didn't owe them anything. And maybe I didn't. But something inside me, some small, stubborn piece of compassion, wouldn't let it go. The next morning, I called the hospital she mentioned. I didn't visit. I didn't talk to anyone. I just quietly paid off her outstanding medical bills. Every cent. The clerk on the phone asked if I wanted to leave a name on the payment record. No, I said. Just mark it as anonymous. 2 weeks later, I got another letter in the mail. This one wasn't angry. The handwriting was still shaky and careful, but the words were different. Aaron, I know what you did. Thank you. I don't deserve your kindness, but you've always been better than any of us. I'm sorry for everything. That was the last message I ever got from her. She passed away a few months later. I didn't go to the funeral. I thought about it, but in the end, I stayed home. There wasn't any anger left in me, just a quiet acceptance that some things can't be fixed. I grieved, not for the mother I had, but for the one I wish she'd been. After that, things changed in ways I hadn't expected. My father sent me an email a few weeks later, just one line. I understand now. No excuses. No manipulation. Just that. And Lily? She tried to reach out again, once, through a long message about how she wanted to start over, how she'd been going to therapy, how she was sorry for everything she'd done. I read it all, every word, and then deleted it. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always mean letting people back in. Sometimes it just means letting go of the weight they left behind. Years went by. My company grew into something far bigger than I'd ever imagined. We expanded into multiple cities, hired dozens of employees, and built partnerships with major firms. I became the person I used to dream about being, the one who didn't need anyone's permission to exist. But success didn't make me forget. It just gave me perspective. One evening, after a long day at work, I found myself driving aimlessly through the outskirts of town. I passed familiar roads, the park where I used to play as a kid, the grocery store where I worked part-time at 16. And eventually, without meaning to, I ended up near that small rental house my parents had moved into after losing everything. The windows were dark. The yard was empty. The house looked abandoned. I parked across the street and sat there for a while, memories flooding back. The fights, the guilt, the years of being told to understand. That's when I realized something important. All that pain, all those years of feeling invisible, they hadn't destroyed me. They'd forged me. I wasn't standing there as the boy they'd overlooked. I was standing there as the man who built something from nothing. Before driving off, I left a small envelope in their old mailbox. Not money, not photos, just a note. I forgive you, but I'm done being your shadow. That was it. A few months later, I heard through an old neighbor that my dad had moved away. Lily too. No one knew where. Maybe they were trying to start over somewhere else. Maybe they were still running from the mess they'd made. Either way, it didn't matter. Their story wasn't mine anymore. Now, every morning, I wake up before sunrise and take a walk by the water. Sometimes, I catch my reflection in the glass of my office windows, the suit, the calm expression, the life I built from the ashes of theirs, and I think about that night I left home with nothing but a diploma and a dream. That boy didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stay where he was. And maybe that's the point. Because in the end, revenge wasn't ruining them. It was becoming everything they said I never could be. I didn't destroy them. I didn't have to. They destroyed themselves the moment they chose to value control over love, pride over family, and appearances over truth. All I did was finally step out of their shadow, and let them face the darkness they created. And standing there now, watching the sunrise over the water, I realized something I'd been waiting my whole life to feel. I was finally free.